Well, welcome everyone. Here we are for another afternoon visit with the Three Amigos. We're excited today as Ed's going to be taking control of this particular session, and he's going to be talking about the entrepreneurial operating system. I'm really looking forward to this. He's got some great perspectives. And also, we'd like to remind you that, if you like what you see here, subscribe on this, and you can get all of our videos. We have probably 20 or more now. So without further ado, Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Ray. I would like to start the meeting off by talking about a system, a model that I found that I've been reading about, and I found out there's a book that has been written, and it's called Traction. It's written by Gino Wickman, and in this book he talks about an entrepreneurial operating system, and I wanted to give a CFO's perspective on it. And I also wanted to compare it a little bit to the 8 drivers that we use. And I'm going to refer to it as the EOS model because I'd rather keep it short and sweet here. We don't have a lot of time, but for all purposes here, here's the way the model looks on the screen. The book talks about 6 important components to running your business, and it starts with vision. Vision's on the top, and that's where you decide where you're going and how you're going to get there. Then talks about people. People obviously is a big issue, getting the right people in the right seats. Data is having a dashboard that you review on a weekly basis, which I found very interesting, of your 5 to 15 leading indicators of your business. Process is the best way every time for getting things done in the business, and there's no exceptions to that. And issues are spending a lot of time on problems and solving them to make the business run better. And then last is his bullet point called Traction, which is basically focusing on 90-day priorities and having weekly and quarterly meetings. And we're going to get into this a little bit more detail here. But before we do so, I wanted to bring up our slides, our 8 drivers that we have prepared together collaboratively. From our experience of roughly 50, 60 years in the business, and see what the differences are. We talk about ours as being market potential, stickiness of customers, grow revenue and margin, increased efficiencies, productivity and quality, invest in high ROI projects, optimize the balance sheet and cash flow, investigate M&A potential partnerships and other types of partnerships, and then the forecasting, reevaluate on a quarterly basis. And when I kind of compare them, and I'm going to be interested to see what you guys have to say about this, but from my comparison, their model is basically focusing on item number 8. And it looks like it's more process driven, which is extremely important also. And I think our 8 drivers are more strategies on how to improve the bottom line. And EOS is more involved with the process of making sure you do this day in and day out so that you create value. So later on, I'd like to talk to you about that and see what your impressions are. It starts off with vision as one of the top 6 components. And when they do vision, they do it differently than us. We start with a SWOT analysis, and then we develop initiatives, and we run the numbers out 3 to 5 years. Their playbook says 8 questions. You answer 8 questions, and I find they're very interesting questions for the most part. Number 1 is core values, guiding principles. I think we all kind of know what that is. Number 2, which we focus on a lot, is core focus. And that's the competitive advantage that a company has, and to how to take advantage of that competitive advantage to optimize your results. They talk about 10-year targets. What do you want to look like? Number 4, I find very interesting because I don't see it in much of the literature in driving value, and that is the marketing strategy, being laser sharp focus. And, when I was in the publishing business for so many years, we had all kinds of marketing strategies, but we never had a laser sharp focus. And the laser sharp focus keeps you very much on target, and it uses your investment in promotion and marketing to the greatest extent possible. You're not wasting money on frivolous stuff that isn't going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And Ron talks about this all the time. And I really agree with it. And I really was impressed that it was number 4 in this model.
Well, I'm interested in that it's even listed under vision. That's the first time I've ever seen anybody build a model where the marketing was part of the vision. So we'll come back and talk more about it.
Yeah, I just think that was interesting. They talk about a 3-year picture. Well, I kind of think that's all derived like a 10-year targets, 3-year picture. It's all related. Then they talk about a 1-year plan. A lot of numbers in here. And then they talk about a quarterly plan. And then they talk about issues. And to me, it's very process driven and a lot of accountability, and there's nowhere to hide. Once you come up with your strategic vision, obviously you have to tell everyone and keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah, I was going to make an observation on that. That's not only the vision, but to Ron's point, that kind of covers the entire process. In other words, going from here's your vision with your core values all the way down to issues and priorities. I like it because it really covers everything. So,
yeah, I kind of like the way we do it. Of course, I'm kind of biased. Yeah. This is the way, ours is mine. Our vision has been based upon our career. We spent 40 years doing it. And I really believe that SWOT analysis is extremely important. And this here to me is more about the process rather than the initiative. So, but we'll keep going through. Again, that's just my impression. You guys may have a different opinion altogether. The next portion or the next component is people, the right people. And they do a very interesting, the right people in the right positions. And on the right people, they kind of evaluate everybody based upon 5 factors. And you can include more factors if you want, but if you have humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing, do what you say, those are really important attributes in people. And obviously, if you get a positive check mark on all 5 of those for every one of your individuals that you're evaluating, that means you kind of got the right people in my mind. And I just found it interesting that they came up with these 5 factors to evaluate people by. And if you don't get positives on all 5, then you're kind of questionable, and you kind of go into the 3-strike rule where people work with you and they talk to you about how to get you on the right path. But eventually what happens after several of these conversations, people find out that this company may not be for them, and they may decide on their own that, hey, maybe there's a better match for me with some other company down the road. So through attrition, you get a workforce that pretty much has the right values, the values of the corporation. And the other thing is we've talked about many times, Ray, when we were out on engagements together, we always like to identify the sewer monkeys and all the talk at the water cooler, because for some reason people won't say things in meetings, but they'll say things behind the scenes, and sometimes it's not very positive, and it goes against what's going on in the room where everybody's communicating. And obviously you want to make sure you minimize that type of activity because it's very counterproductive and it causes problems in the organization getting everybody on the same page.
Right.
They come up with an accountability chart, which is really, really interesting to me. and making sure people are in the right positions. And they talk about your operators. You got like 3 major departments in a company. You have sales and marketing. Again, sales and marketing is mentioned. It should be operations and finance. And so everybody's got jobs to do in these departments, but you got to make sure everything is integrated and coordinated so you're not fighting one another at the detriment of the corporation. So you have an integrator. And an integrator can be a COO or a CFO who's properly trained and has the experience to do so, where you kind of make sure everybody's on the same page and the results that are being produced by the various department heads is in concert with the strategic vision and the core values of the company. And then at the top, they call it a visionary, an owner or a CEO who's got the big idea, the big picture and the big ideas for moving the corporation forward. And I thought this was a very effective way of kind of showing the relationship of the various people in the company. Would love to hear your opinion of this chart.
Well, my thought is won't be a surprise to the two of you. Marketing is not a department. Marketing is a function, just like the word management and the activity of management is a function. And so when you put it down as an operator, it makes it seem as though, and when you list sales first, you mean you're really indicating to people marketing doesn't matter very much. But really, the whole point is that the visionary, the big idea guy, is the marketing guy, and that's the way it works. Entrepreneurs only work in that fashion, where the big ideas are about how are you going to do something for a customer, and all of the big ideas that we see in technology and pharmaceuticals and so forth are all focused on a customer, and how are you going to join a product with the customer. So this is an old, outdated model to me, and it's not how entrepreneurs work at all.
Okay, Ray, do you have any feedback?
Yeah, no, I think to Ron's point, the bottom should have been function and then department heads as opposed to operators. I like this idea. I think there is, no matter where you are, the hierarchy still remains consistent. You know, whether you're a small business or a large one, you know, you typically have the visionary owner, regardless of what he's doing. He's the guy that's driving everything. And then you still, as it grows, you have to have somebody who can pull all that together. And I think that's where we've seen a challenge. There are many times there's nobody there that's really integrating the data. The smaller the business, the more likely there's no way to track key indicators. So I think that integrator function is really an important one. And to Ron's point, you know, I think these are at the bottom, they're functions. You know, you got sales and marketing, you got finance. Operations could be divided out obviously into minor pieces, service, delivery, etc. But the bottom line is that it is a function that has to be done in order for the business to succeed. So that's my observation.
To me, it's a little bit hard to have to say you're going to have a marketing plan with laser focus, and you put it 3 levels down. Makes no sense. You've got to have the laser focus coming from the very top. That's the only way it gets done. When you separate operations, finance, and sales and marketing into 3 pieces, you don't get laser focus at all. You have to have it happen at the top.
Yeah, I do think though, you know, you may be right on the marketing side of that going to the top. And all at the top, it's going to have an impact on all the different department heads. And I just believe that it comes down to terminology. Department heads are operators, and department heads, they manage functions. And so I
think the reason that I have such strong feelings about it is that nowhere have we talked about customers yet. And, and this particular chart in the format we've seen from these guys so far has indicated that they think customers are secondary. It's like, we've got a product, we're going to go out and try and sell it, and we're going to do marketing in a traditional sense. This is just another way to prove that they're not up to date on what works for marketing for entrepreneurs.
I think that's a very legitimate point. It all resides and with the customer. So
You bet.
That good point. Then we get into the third component, which is data, and they propose a weekly dashboard. And they have this big spreadsheet of say between 5 and 15 different numbers that they provide. They put the number in every week, and that's the dashboard. And I obviously, in my whole career, I've never seen anything like that. I usually see it on a monthly basis, but doing it on a weekly basis and have the management team regimented to that type of accountability, I thought was pretty impressive. So it does give you a pulse of the business. Everybody's looking at the numbers every week. The numbers have to be relevant, objective, measurable, the foundation for accountability, clarity, and commitment. So I think, again, it can lead to a great way of managing a company where everybody has a number that they have to hit and nobody can hide.
Right.
Yeah, no, those are good. We've all advocated that forever. If we can just get it done, it's hard to get small people to do it. Weekly is nice. I will say that lots of sales departments have weekly numbers. So
yeah, and I think that's good. And I've been involved with some of Ron's meetings in marketing and sales, and it's pretty impressive. It has the weekly numbers, and you measure them over every week over time, and it really does start to tell a story.
you bet.
And again, everybody is accountable for what their number is. Processes, I found, is an interesting point. They say focus on documenting your 20% of the process that generate 80% of the value. And I think a lot of companies get lost in this documentation process because it's overwhelming. When you try to document everything in a business to the nth degree, it's an ongoing project, and it takes a lot of time to implement. And I think it ends up on somebody's shelf rather than being used on a weekly basis. I think something like this, if you focus on the key functions and document them in some type of a way that it can be reviewed, say once a month or once a quarter, or whatever, I think there's a lot of value in that. And I know it adds a lot of value when you go and sell a business, because again, when you sell the business, you're not going to be there as the owner operator. Somebody from the outside wants to verify that you have processes in place that are going to continue when you're gone.
Yeah, this is a really good insight, I think, from them. They're using the old Pareto principle, which I'm sure is absolutely right. If you work on 20% of it, you're going to get 80% of the value, and you might actually get 20% of it done. So it's a very good observation.
Yeah, so I agree with that entirely. Going on to the next one is issues. And when you see the weekly meeting that they propose, it's all about issues. It's getting all the issues down on a piece of paper on a list. But more importantly, it's to create a culture of trust, open and honest communication, where people feel comfortable that they can raise issues that can be put on a list to be solved without getting into some type of political conflict with somebody else in the company. So I really think that's important, and I think transparency goes along with it hand in hand. And I also believe that with solving problems, a lot of times problems, they never get written down. They only come up when there's a problem that reemphasize that it needs to be solved. But there's no ongoing effort to fix or solve that problem. And usually it comes down to people have a tough time making the tough decisions. And the decisions don't get made, and the problems keep happening, and it causes a negative impact on your bottom line. So they talk about identifying the issues, getting them on a list, discuss as a team and assign accountability, and prioritize and solve for the benefit of the company. It's not for the benefit of operations, or it's not the benefit of finance, because a lot of people like to put it in that terminology. It's about what's best for the company. So accounting may not want to do something, but the benefits derived from doing it are so great that they should continue doing it, even though it's a hindrance or a negative aspect from their staffing standpoint of providing that information. That's their jobs, in my opinion. And if it has a profound positive impact on the rest of the corporation, they should continue doing it. And so that's another issue. And I think, the biggest issue, even us, when we talk about things, is being able to solve personal issues between team members. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is if you don't do that, you have subcultures within the same company, and they're always trying to articulate things in their manner, what's best for them, or their thinking, rather than what's best for the corporation. So I really believe you need to lay your cards on the table in a very transparent manner and work through these issues and try to come up with some type of a working relationship where you can make decisions that benefit the corporation, and try to take as much of the personal ego out of the equation as possible. Any comments on that aspect, gents?
Good insights. I think we could talk about personal issues for a long time. I used to say to my employees when I was in the retail business, when you walk through the door, your personal items and issues stay outside. We don't ever talk about them. I found that to be the best policy with a whole lot of mostly young kids. I say kids who are, just out of college or maybe just out of high school. They all had issues and they all like to talk about them all the time. And that never, ever, ever served the customer in any way, shape, or form. And so we just simply had to practice. If you have personal stuff, you got to take a break and leave the building. And that worked pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I was going to say these issues are really important, and it's significant that if you want to be able to make things move forward, you have to be able to help them understand where they're going, and as much as possible get rid of the ego things. And I think, as Ron was pointing out, the younger you are, the more that plays a role in your life, and the more mature you become, the more you realize that's really a distraction as opposed to anything positive.
Well, I think another thing you can do, and one of my jobs, I found this to be very interesting, is if you took a camera and you had it in the meeting room and you watch the looks of people's on faces and sidebars or people were making with one another, it's pretty revealing that team isn't on the same page. If you see rolling eyes every time somebody speaks because it's contrary to the way they're thinking, that's probably not a good sign that your team is together and on the same page.
Yeah.
They come up with 10 commandments for problem solving. I find this really interesting. I just want to take you through them real quick here. Don't rule by consensus, rule by facts. I really believe in that. It's because the whole group believes one way and one person doesn't make that minority position wrong. You don't know. It could be the right position to take. You have to be strong-willed. You can't waffle on issues. You can't have bended knees. You got to be strong in your conviction and build a case. And you have to be decisive. You can't let things linger. And you want to obviously focus on firsthand information and facts and figures rather than secondhand information that you gain at the water cooler. Number 5 is consider the greater good, the corporation and the customer. Consider the customer rather than considering what's best for a certain department. And this happens all the time in meetings. You have one department blaming everything on another department, and not stepping up and taking responsibility to help solve the problem. Number 6 is prioritize. You got to solve the big ones first because they have the greatest impact on your bottom line. You have to decide either to live with it, solve it, or end it. But move on, make a decision.
I would say living with it is not dealing with it. Then I would say end it or solve it.
Yeah, sometimes
not-
the problem is
Yeah,
something.
let's not live with it. That's putting it off.
Yeah. I think you focus normally on the long-term gain rather than short pain.
I agree.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Whatever
Yeah.
best for me is the way we want to do it, right? Well, that's not the way it works. Focus on the problems that you fear the most that could have the biggest impact on your bottom line in the long term. And voice a solution. Don't sit in your seat, wait for somebody else to say something. Show your convictions and lay it on the line. You might be right. You start a honest conversation with transparency, and that's very powerful. So they went out to great lengths to identify these items, and I think kind of shows you that they focus a lot on solving problems. And I think a lot of benefits can be derived by solving problems quickly.
Well, I wanted to go back to that if you can. I think one of the challenges or one of the importance of leadership, if you look back at that little hierarchy we did, Ed, is, how do you make sure that all the people are participating, because they have different behavioral preferences. Some like to talk and will talk all the time, and some people will not say anything unless you ask them. And so to me, I like these. When you want to voice a solution, you really have to, sometimes you have to ask people because they sometimes don't feel it's their place to be able to say anything, and they'll just hold it in as opposed to expressing themselves. So I think that's part of the responsibility of both the leader and developing a strong culture.
Well, that's why you need a Ray Anderson involved who spends time in various levels of management and in the employee structure and helping people feel more confident bringing things to the forefront so that can be solved.
Right.
But we all know the one factor that kills you the fastest is when top management doesn't allow this to happen.
Yep.
And I don't know why people feel that way. I know feedback can be really hurtful at times. And you can feel like you just got run over by a bus. But unless you have those honest conversations, you really can't move forward. And I think you got to do it in the right way, in a professional manner, and focusing on the problem and not on personalities really helps a lot.
Cool. Thank you.
The last component that they talk about is traction, and I think they did a great job on this also. They break up the year into 90-day segments, and they break out every week of the 90 days as a separate event. And you focus on your priorities for that quarter, and you look at your numbers and you meet. And they talk about a 90-minute meeting. Now, I've been in management for 40 some years. I'm not sure I could ever hold a meeting in 90 minutes and hit all these objectives. I think maybe over time you can with the right type of structure in a meeting and trying to keep everybody focused on the agenda. But I think it's an ideal way of holding a meeting. And as you can see, of the 90 minutes, 2/3 of the meeting is on tackling issues, on problems. And the rest of the time is trying to figure out what you're going to do next quarter or next week, and looking at what good news you have, review the scorecards, how are you doing on the 90-day priorities, any customer employee headlines, really important, probably should be number one actually. But I think it's really something to aspire to, and I think it's a pretty good agenda.
Yeah.
This is very similar to an agenda that I've used for a long time, 25 years at least. And I've found it to be very effective for those clients where the leaders will learn to do it and have the discipline to do it and teach their managers, for instance, or their team to do it. And the problem all comes from the top. If the top doesn't run the meeting,
Yep.
then it can be an issue. One of the things that one client has done is that they have in their management meeting, they rotate the lead, and one manager takes the lead every single week. And so rotating that gives them all an opportunity to participate at another level, and gives them all kind of an equal status in the meeting and in the company.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ron. And the companies that I find have been most effective try to transfer that leadership role for just that reason, because, it gives everybody a chance to understand what it takes to run something and also to lead a meeting and to develop their confidence, so I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah.
I think getting back to the point you made earlier, Ray, is that some people like to talk a lot. Somehow you have to have ground rules that people stay focused on the agenda and can't go off on, well, over the weekend we did this.
Yep.
A waste of time, and that's what this
Right.
thing. I totally agree. I know we talk a lot about strategic issues and how we're doing on building value, but I really like this weekly focus
Yeah.
of getting this done every week, everybody on the same page, looking at the numbers and walking.
Well, I see this, yeah, and as a, I agree. I see this as an operational meeting. There should not be strategy discussions at this meeting.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that.
Right, big vision, and they don't really. They're saying focus on 90-day objectives. I don't know. I think that's a little too long for most companies. You don't think every week. You don't think about 90-day objectives. Every week you think about 1 week or 2 weeks out. So I would scratch that first point and say this is weekly. If you're going to do it weekly, this is the weekly meeting agenda. So they've mixed up two things: weekly, quarterly, 90-day objectives. Those are two different meetings, not one.
Yeah, I was thinking, Ron, on that one, it might be better to have, are we on target for our priorities, which can be done on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, if you can break up your goals, if you have 90-day goals, you're going to have weekly goals too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I was just, like as you were saying, in terms of sales and marketing, we know that it's a numbers game. How many phone calls you make, how many appointments that you make, and
you bet.
And so if they had, I think that would serve this
Right.
more effectively. It's a matter of looking at the priorities, but what does that mean today or this
Right.
week? And I think that's what you're asking.
Right. And how many customer service calls and how many did we satisfy? Those kind of things.
Right.
And then on a 90-day meeting, what you do is you look at trends.
Yeah.
You take all of that data and you utilize that in order to be able to take a look at the trend to determine if our customer service calls are going up or going down.
Right.
You
And
can't look at that in one.
adjustments?
Yeah, you might sense in 1 week that it's up a little more than the last week, but it takes time to be able to draw a chart and realize, hey guys, we're going the really wrong way here.
Right.
So two different meetings, I think they've got them mixed up here.
I think the point on making sure this isn't a strategic conversation is extremely important, because strategic probably should be more on a quarterly basis.
Right.
And it does take up a lot of time. On their quarterly meetings, they look for 1 full day a quarter to review most of these issues. And the financials, a 90-day
Okay.
et cetera.
Yeah, that's more in line.
An 8-hour meeting, and as you can imagine, that's about what it takes. So 8 hours, and they recommend it off-site so people are away from the day-to-day grind. And I also think that's a very good approach on this whole thing. Then we get into the takeaways, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about something like this. obviously somebody spent a lot of time on this, and this is an international effort, this organization, and they have people trained to be implementers throughout the world to do this, which I think is pretty impressive. I don't know too many other models that have that type of structure.
Well,
So,
they may have productized it a little bit, but I see very little that's new or innovative in it. To be honest with you, this is standard business management process, and part of it, as I mentioned earlier, part of it's wrong. To me, the idea that you can come in now for a small business where it's a plumbing organization and you got 5 people, or you've got a product you deliver and your dad did it that way and that's the way you do it. For those kinds of small businesses, this kind of a thing could be really, really helpful if they're disorganized, can't seem to get any traction. Makes a lot of sense. But when you say the word entrepreneur, I'm thinking of somebody who is in it to make a bunch of money. They want to focus on customers. They want to fill the marketplace. They want to get the product to them. They want to sell it and move on. That is an entrepreneur to me. So I think they've used the wrong word to describe a process that's not entrepreneurial. It's just sort of, this is how you run and operate a business.
Yeah,
I would say that time is much better spent to teach a typical client that they need to stop focusing on the operations and start focusing on their customers and their market. That's what drives business, not this stuff. It was Peter Drucker that said, you're only in business for 2 reasons. One is to get a new customer, and the second is to innovate. Everything else is just a cost. There's a lot of cost here. I don't see much innovation. I just see problem solving. So yeah, it's okay. It's well done. They've done a nice job structuring it. There aren't any new ideas here.
Well, and I think what I was going to leave you with, Ed, is that I like this as a model for someone who is struggling with, how do I structure my business? And to that point, I think what Ron was alluding to, there are too many businesses that are started by a craftsman who really doesn't have a clue as to how to move forward. This is a good model for them to say, okay, this is how I can do this. On a broader knowledge, with the Baldrige, the Baldrige contains all these things, and if it's implemented effectively, it has this entire methodology inside of it. And so if we look at this, or we look at some of the other programs that are out there right now that help businesses move forward throughout the world, this is a simple one. I like this. I think it has a lot of merit. But in some cases, I think the Baldrige would be a superior way of looking at this.
I agree. I think Baldrige is far superior, I think.
I think we should look at Baldrige down the road. I think we've talked about that before, but I do want to give my opinion of it. I worked in management a long time, and I have never seen this type of a drive and this type of a structure on a weekly basis. And this time they spend on evaluating the people, and an organization chart that has everybody listed and what their responsibilities are on a big sheet of paper, where you can kind of see who's responsible for what, which departments they work. I think it's a pretty valuable approach, and it might not be, it's nothing new. And it's not something that everybody is doing, but I think there's some value in it. And I think any company who really wants to take advantage of people and processes, etc., they need something like this, whether it's Baldrige, this, or something else, or a mixture of the two. You need something like this. And I would venture to say most companies don't have anything. And I think that's why I think they're leaving a couple percentage points in the hole on their performance, because they're not doing anything like this. And
well, Ed, I think you sell yourself short here just a little bit. I think that your 8 driver process covers just about everything that we've seen here. And it is much more detailed and drives the point of how you actually increase value in your business.
Right.
This is an operational thing that helps somebody who's clueless get started and do some basic things. And if they did it exactly right, it would be helpful. I agree with Rick.
Right.
But
Right.
truly, your system is way more valuable than this particular one. And I wouldn't spend too much time working on this one. I'd just do your 8 driver myself.
Yeah, and I
well,
think I can give you a pat on the back on that too, Ed. I think you did
Yeah.
a good job of helping. This what I see here, this is a great tool for a small guy who's trying to figure out how to do this and the way to do it. And I agree with the weekly, I agree with the measurements. All those things are things that they don't typically think about, particularly if it's a craftsman. It's not his idea. And I think as Ron and I and you found out, if you don't really understand how to structure it, you're going to end up going the way of the dodo.
yeah.
Right. And there are
Well,
lots of dodos out there.
Right.
Well, in summary, the way I saw it more about process, and I see the value drivers more about strategy. And do you guys think that's on target or not?
Yeah.
No, I think, well, you could end up combining some of these things and have a good program. Yeah, no doubt. But this is sort of like a basic outline that your drivers, are superior in the sense that they actually talk about customers as the main one of the couple of the main ways that you actually make your company valuable. There's nothing about value in this process. And actually, I think increasing the value of your business is such a relatively new concept.
Yeah.
It's been around for a while, but the Koch brothers have been doing it for 20 years. But for the most part, people don't do it. It's still a fresh, new, and really valuable way to increase everything in your business. I really feel like this is a little bit stale compared to what you put together.
So there you go, Ed. We think you're ahead of this curve.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time to do this presentation and look at all this wonderful material. And I'll pass it over to you, Ray, to end the meeting.
Yeah, and what I think we're, the objective that we've had since we started this is that each of us has a different perspective. And the point is that somebody's listening, and as they watch this, they see that there are many ways to be able to do this. There are some nuggets in this. I agree with you, Ed, that there are some nuggets for somebody who's trying to figure out how to structure that I think are good. If there's somebody that's really sophisticated, they may want to look at something like the Baldrige to say, I want to be more refined in what I'm doing. They're neither about, it's not about good or bad, but it is about different. And we have to help everybody. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do. So I want to thank both of you again. You guys have a good weekend. And we'll meet again next Friday with a new topic. Maybe we ought to be talking about that Baldrige and what that